Welcome to the Situation Report today. Very glad to have you joining the conversation. This is the show where we do our very best to give you the information and perspectives you need to navigate an ever-changing culture. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker. I am your host today and excited for the interview that you are about to hear. Our guest today, Tho Bishop, has been on this show several times, and I love talking with Tho because he has such a good mind on what's happening in the world and such an articulate, clear way of explaining it. When we talk about having the right perspectives on what's happening, it's hard to settle on the right perspective. Tho is an economist and such incredible work with the Mises Institute. Again, we've talked about this often, but today we're going to talk about a lot of the other stuff that's going on in our world. We talk a lot about Florida. He's from Florida. Some of the things that Governor DeSantis has done that needs to be modeled or followed by governors and leaders across the country. Other aspects and insights we need to get a hold of if we are going to move forward, vote right, have an impact in our communities, and very grateful to share this conversation with you. It is great to have back on with us today Tho Bishop, and Tho's been a guest several times on the Situation Report. He is the assistant editor for the Mises Wire, has served as deputy communications director for the House Financial Services Committee, writes and speaks on the economy, government, and culture, and most of the time we've talked about the economy. But Tho, I was just mentioning there's so much going on in the world right now. We might meander a little bit and try to explore some of it. But thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
No, always an honor to join you guys.
Let's start with this. So scrolling through your Twitter feed, as I sometimes do, you have a quote pinned there right now. It's a quote from Hans Hermann Hoppe. Even if we do not see our ideas triumph during our lifetime, we will know and be eternally proud that we gave it our all and that we did what every honest and noble person had to do. That's a great quote. It's also a little bit depressing. Because sometimes I think that's how I feel. Maybe a lot of people feel that way, is we don't know how this thing's going to turn out, but we need to do our very best in the process. What does that quote mean to you, or kind of the philosophy that underlies that?
Well, and I have attached with that quote a old photo right down the road from where I live in Panama City Beach. And it is an image of a time that no longer exists. My hometown, we've always kind of been the travel destination, amongst the Southeast. It's kind of the redneck Riviera and Panama City Beach.
Yeah.
And yet over time, kind of these old local landmarks became corporatized, right? We've had so much economic, subsidized through monetary policy and things like this, different government policies, that the idea of a small tourist town that really cared about kind of local history and local community has given way to, again, this very much a sort of corporate behemoth. And so that is my own sort of trying to localize these issues, because it's easy to talk in kind of lofty ideas about liberty in the abstract or ideas in the abstract, but ultimately what we have to be talking about, I think what really matters is the stories that our families have. It's the stories that we pass on to our children. It is the culture and the values, right? We want our offspring to remember us fondly. We want them to share this legacy that we have all obligations to build upon each generation. And I think that a lot of the problems we have in America is that we've become very atomized, very individualized. Tradition has given way to pure commercial factors or ideological factors. That's why they're trying to take away sports, I think, is a big way, right? College sports, particularly in the South, is very tradition building. And so it is something that we've lost a great deal of. And what I'm encouraged by, though, is that in spite of how dark these times are, in spite of all the forces, both domestic and foreign, that are trying to change this aspect of American life, I'm very encouraged that we seem to have, particularly on the right, a renewed sense of purpose and seriousness on how do we actually attack the underlying causes that have brought this into being, and how can we fight back to actually, instead of us continuing to lose these battles, how can we actually start getting wins? And again, I think that this is why I'm very proud to be a Florida man, because I think nobody embodies that better than the great Governor Ron DeSantis.
There's an entire new economy being created right now, filled with patriotic companies that have had enough of cancel culture and the left. One you can support every day, and all you have to do is get dressed. I'm talking about Undertac boxers. These have to be the greatest boxers ever made, probably because they have literally been tested by Special Forces operators. They're made with high-quality material that's antimicrobial, anti-pilling, and moisture wicking, so you stay fresh and dry all day long. They come with a sturdy yet comfortable waistband that doesn't crack or loosen. Undertac is durable, ultralight, and shrink resistant. Here's the best part, they're almost 30% less than the woke designer brands with the non-binary models. Go to getundertac.com, that's getundertac.com. Right now, when you buy 3, get 1 free, but only with the offer code SITREP20, SITREP20. Support a great American company that's pro-America, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-military. Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. GetUndertac.com. That's GetUndertac.com. Offer code SITREP20. Yeah, how do we get back to some of those? I won't say small town ideals. It's funny. So I'm 46 years old, which means I was basically grew up in the 90s, basically, the last part of the 80s, so I think fondly to some of those times. But when the world seems to get out of control, I try to find a good episode of the Andy Griffith Show or something like that, small town Americana, where people cared about each other and they were much more concerned about helping their neighbor than what was going on in the world. And it seems like right now, even people who care about that are spending all of their time focused on national politics and what's happening, around the world. And we're screaming about so many things and not really making a difference, I think, where we are locally. How do we get back to that? Or maybe we are moving that direction. Maybe that's what you mean when you talk about what we're doing kind of on the conservative side. But how do we get back to that? How do we refocus to those things that are actually important with all the noise going on around us?
Well, this is kind of the double-edged sword of the sort of, modern Wi-Fi world that we're living in, right?
Yeah.
That it is easy, the communities that particularly, millennials and the Zoomers and those thereafter, the sense of community we have, it's in message boards or, the Twitter group chat or video game communities, right? And there is an aspect of that. We're great. Right, we can interact with people we would never interacted with before. We can engage with ideas that maybe you now find in our local library. Right, it's not all bad. Right, I think it's very easy to take a nihilistic, Ted Krasinski sort of outlook that every part of the Industrial Revolution, right, has been a disaster for mankind. I don't think that is right either. But I think we have to actively work at not falling into the trap of doing these sort of almost easy escapism. Right. And I think what the left has been very good at, right, is that the left has an army full of people whose sense of higher purpose internally is infiltrating your local school board. It's infiltrating your HOA. It's infiltrating these institutions that really have a great say on what goes on in our day-to-day life. And it's because politics is their god, right? They don't want to go out and grill, right? That's bad for the environment, right? Tofu doesn't go well on the grill. So instead their pastime is the political. And conservatives our fault has been our strength is that what we care about is living our lives, right? We don't want to be thinking in a political world constantly. This is why the left has been able to organize en masse political pressure to take over almost every single major institution in the country, ranging from not only the government and the bureaucracy, but higher churches, universities are obvious, et cetera, corporate power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're motivated by this, and I think what we need to do is getting involved within local infrastructure, and it can be as little as getting involved in your local Republican Party, right? If we have a lot of young people out there watching this show, if you're able to take over your local Republican Party's social media account, you can change the way that the Republican Party is communicated within your community in ways that can kind of help shape the narrative. I've been able to have some success with that here in Bay County. getting involved again in the school board issue in particular. If nothing else, filling space so they can't be taken over by left-wing activists that want to force, gender affirmation policies within conservative areas. I live in a plus 43 Trump County. The head of our school health advisory committee is a literal trans activist, right? That shouldn't happen in an area like this. And so we have to, I think, get off a little bit off of Twitter. This doesn't mean we have to, again, we don't have to throw away all of our apps, right? We can still engage with in fun, but we cannot lose focus on what matters. And of course, and another part of that is just simply living those values, getting to know your neighbor, creating a good friend group, and again, making sure that the ties that we have are not simply virtual, but they are physical in the real world. And again, who you surround yourself with on a daily basis, I think, is going to have a lot of well-being. Again, particularly for those younger people out there, that will help shape your future paths more than anything else. Yeah,
that's good. I like that too, because I think it's a long-term solution. I feel like we're still at a time coming out of the 2020 election where there are a lot of people who are hoping for a Hail Mary. Something crazy is going to happen that's going to change the power dynamic, and we're going to get right back to where we were pre-COVID or whatever. And it seems to me that there are a lot of people that are hoping for that while not getting involved in their community, not getting involved in, I've been a proponent of getting, and I'm not on my HOA board, but I'm always pushing other people to get on their HOA board because I think that's important. That's a place to start. Do you think some of that is changing? Are we moving away from this, let's just hope something crazy happens that gets us back? Are people starting to focus more on, some of these, I would say this level that we can control what happens? Are people focusing more there?
I think it's happening on some levels. Again, none of this happens overnight. There are no silver bullets to any of this. I think that you've seen it with the increased interest, particularly in school board elections. With education policy driving the Virginia election last year. Governor DeSantis had a great amount of success flipping. Sarasota County in Florida, it went from being a 3-2 liberal dominated school board to being, I believe, a 4-1 conservative one. And just this week prior to this past weekend, prior to those new school board members going on, they're literally holding QueerCon, targeting middle school students, right? And so this is the way where, you can stop that by getting involved at that sort of level. I think you also see it play out with the amount of attention I see out there for like Arizona's gubernatorial race. I think Ron DeSantis and his leadership has highlighted what can actually be done if you have that strong figure within the governor's mansion. I think you can kind of contrast this with, again, Texas was lagging behind on COVID. Utah in many ways has been a disaster because of who their governor is in spite of being a nominal Republican, right? And so the more, I think the more that you see Republicans around the country being envious of what Ron DeSantis has done for Florida and increasingly looking for their own Ron DeSantis within their own state. Again, that's not taking it necessarily at the local level, but the state level, and that's a strong suit. There is kind of a flip side of that, though, is that I know here in Florida there is a lot of, I think, creeping complacency because there's so much faith in what DeSantis has done. Where I know we had primaries here in Florida, late in August. The turnout was very low. Here locally it was about 24%. And so if you don't have say people that have been energized into politics because of Trump, because of COVID, because of new factors, right? If the only people that vote in the primaries are the people that have been voting in the primaries for 25 years, then don't be surprised when you have people at that state legislative level that resemble the Republican Party that has racked up a lot of losses, representing you. And so we need to take this sense of urgency. We need to appreciate the gains that are being made, but apply that sense of urgency, again, not into trying to pack it all into, a president or a governor is going to come in to save us, but instead trying to make sure that our communities are represented by people that sound like us, people that share our values. And again, that is where, none of this was going to happen overnight. There's a process involved with it. There's plenty of silver linings out there, but until we get to trending in the right direction, to being in the right spot, we're still going to have some unnecessary defeats during that pattern. But again, hopefully people are waking up to that.
So Governor DeSantis has really provided an example of what strong leadership looks like, what it can do, the impact that it can have on a state. And you just mentioned that. One of the frustrating things for me as a conservative and someone who votes, most of the time as a Republican, is that Republicans talk the right talk. They say the right things. But unlike Governor DeSantis, they rarely take the right actions. They're afraid. I don't know what it is. I want to call it fear. I don't know them, so I can't, I guess, say that. But they're not taking the game to the other team as the Democrats do to us. I mean, the liberals do not seem to care who's on the other side. They're playing the game. They're playing to win. They're going to do whatever they have to win. And Republicans, unlike Governor DeSantis, traditionally have not done that. Even right now, aren't doing that on some of these issues. Some of these crazy issues, wins that are happening, they're absolutely silent. What is it going to take to energize the right, if anything? And I know you mentioned that kind of on the downstream to the voter, but even those in the House and in the Senate and those who are elected leaders, when will they stand up and start to actually lead? Before we jump into that, though, I would imagine if you've been to the grocery store recently, you've noticed that things are more expensive. Gas is more expensive. It doesn't matter where you live in this country, things are more expensive. The economy, our economic future is uncertain. And we have to ask ourselves the question, what is it that we can do to protect our financial future for our families, for our children? What can we do personally? One of the things I would recommend is at least considering adding gold and silver into your IRA, your investment accounts. Take a look, figure out how to do that, and see if that is the right fit for you. The place that you can start is with Lear Capital. Call Lear Capital, and you can get their free precious metals investor guide. You can also ask them about their Lear Advantage IRA that lets you transfer or roll over your old 401k or IRA into a gold and silver tax advantage IRA. Plus, Lear is offering right now crazy shipping, free shipping, and up to $15,000 in bonus gold or silver with a qualified purchase. This is something you at least need to take a look at. You can call for details 800-489-6450. Lear Capital is the most rated precious metals company on Consumer Affairs with a near perfect rating on Trustpilot. Call them at 800-489-6450. That is 800-489-6450. Calling that number, you will get your free kit, and there you will learn how gold has performed during periods of inflation, government debt, interest rate hikes, economic crashes, even wars, and how in all of those gold has been the financial bedrock asset in portfolios. One of the things I love about Lear Capital is that they are an American-owned company, proud to do business with Americans that share conservative values. Write this number down, 800-489-6450. Call them today, or if you don't want to call, you can click the link below in the show description and the show notes. Check them out. You will do yourself a great service by at least investigating Lear and what they have to offer. They have an example. They know what can happen when it happens. They know how people will respond to strong leaders. When will they start to lead, or what will that take?
Well, the problem is, for a very long time, the Republican Party has effectively served as controlled opposition, and they're controlled not explicitly by the left or anything like that, but they're controlled by corporations. They're controlled by the Chamber of Commerce. They're controlled by this very, I think, self-destructive, self-defeating idea that that big business represents capitalism, free markets, whatever their sort of vague notions of Reaganite economic policy is, right?
Yep.
And so therefore, if corporations want culturally left agenda items, or else they're not going to move to your state, well then, golly gosh darn, what will you have us do? We can't turn down those jobs, which of course tend to be people relocating to that state.
Yeah.
This has been a big problem in Texas, which then changes the political makeup of Texas, right?
Right.
What has really set Governor DeSantis apart, and let's say contrast him with, say, someone like Brian Kemp. And I'm not going to try to take shots at Brian Kemp over the election. That's kind of, that's a distraction from the underlying point here. If you look at COVID, for example, Brian Kemp opened up Georgia before Ron DeSantis did, after lockdowns, right? So credit Kemp for that.
Yep.
What made Florida so effective, what made DeSantis a true leader on COVID, was not him reversing the lockdowns that he put in place with great amount of pressure from the Trump administration. And again, I think a big part of that is when you're dealing with one of the oldest states in the country, right? COVID hits differently. Yeah. You need here nor there. What made him different, though, was two things. For one, he clawed back local powers and increasingly over time. So it started off by kind of eliminating the penalties and fines that local that the city of Tampa or Orlando were placing on people that weren't masking up, right, or weren't locking down, and then going full out to explicitly banning any citywide restrictions that are COVID related. Whereas you go to Georgia. You go to the city of Atlanta, right? City of Atlanta was able to have a very different type of policy relative to, what the rest of the state wanted, right? The other side of it, though, and the more important one, was him going after, again, this corporate influence. And this was on display, particularly with his reining back on the vaccine mandate for jobs. And you had leaders within the Florida Republican legislature going to the Florida Chamber of Commerce and mocking the idea that, if you have employees thinking that we're going to allow them to dictate their terms of employment with their employer, well, then they're going to have another thing coming. Yeah. Right? This was, they were flaunting this publicly. And then what happened is that Governor DeSantis went on Tucker Carlson's show and said, no, we're not simply talking about Biden's COVID mandates, but we are talking about Disney's corporate mandates. And once he laid down the law and said, guess what? If you are a corporation in the state of Florida, then you're not going to be able to have this power either. That's when things started to change. And then he did it by banning vaccine passports. By him banning vaccine passports, that really put a hitch in the entire attempt to make a national vaccine passport mechanism. He's done it with, right now it's in the courts, but trying to ban CRT training within corporate employee orientations and things like that. Obviously, he handled Disney after they after they vowed to use their financial resources to repeal the Parental Rights and Education bill, right? So what has made DeSantis a different figure has been precisely his willingness to punch corporation and corporate power right in the face. There's libertarians that have had objections to this. What I would argue they fail to recognize is the extent to which our economic system, again, we are not a free market system, as we've talked about in the past, the role the Federal Reserve plays in subsidizing the consolidation of corporate power, which no longer makes the market about serving customers or providing value or innovating, but rather your proximity political power. If your political orientation is that, we can't have any sort of influence on what these private corporations doing the state's bidding are doing, then you're not protecting liberty. And I think it's taken a while, but Republicans, I think, are slowly shifting on this narrative. I think some of that is the popularity of DeSantis. But the problem is that so long as you have, Republican national leadership, you think of the Kevin McCarthy's in the world, you think of the Mitch McConnells, if their top priority, and this is not irrational to be concerned about, but if their top priority is getting money from Google, right, or these big corporations that have different agendas, rather than it is representing your Republican Party, at a certain point, I think primary battles are where voters can make the biggest difference. Sometimes you have this very difficult situation, though, where if the choice is a Democrat who is, by definition, at this point in time, bad. I don't know if there's any good Democrats out there anymore. Unfortunately, there used to be. Or allowing a really bad Republican to lose and try to take that seat, a little bit out. There's many occasions where, I would rather, allow a vulnerable Republican be replaced through that process, particularly if you're looking at the numbers game, right? If we've got some if it's not like a Georgia Senate sort of situation where it's a complete control. I think these are very valid. Republican voters should not feel that they are obligated to vote for a party and politicians that don't represent them. And we have to make Republican politicians interested in actually giving a damn about what their local voter truly cares about. And again, that's require inserting a bit of force. And again, I think you have a lot of Republicans wanting to be DeSantis. Maybe his model will shake things up. The amount of success that he's had, I think, is changing the way that they're calculating. You look at Ron DeSantis' war chest. He has $100 million more than Charlie Crist. So this concern about you can't raise money and do your job. Yeah, right. I think is being and again, it takes. We have a lot of cowards in politics, right? And so it takes people to break the mold and to show success in creating a new model for people to feel comfortable doing it down the road. I think Trump had a very similar impact, and there would have been no DeSantis without Trump, right? And so the more that we have people that are willing to break the mold and set a trend and show success doing it, I think that creates opportunities for these, let's call them lesser men, to follow their wakes and follow a winning example.
When we look at Ron DeSantis, a lot of people, I think, take the position that everything he's doing is political. It's all a political stunt. There has to be something behind it that's not real. And I think we've rightfully so become very cynical of politicians. The the proof of what he's done obviously is in so much of what's happened in Florida in the last year or so. What are some things about Ron DeSantis that is outside of maybe the left's characterization of him, outside of mainstream media's characterization of him? What are some things about him that you, as someone who supports him and you're in Florida and you talk about this, that you wish other people knew or that normal people knew? And maybe some of those things would empower Republicans who are coming up. What are some things we don't know about him that we need to know about him?
Well, it's been an interesting dynamic for me because I come from a very libertarian space, right? The idea of actually being proud of, who my political representation is was completely foreign to me before, 2020 in many ways. What has always impressed me the most and what really started to, I went from being, okay, well, DeSantis is the least worst Republican option as governor, which was kind of why I was a big supporter of him in 2018. I hated the guy he was running against. It was the way he started using language, actually. He started talking about the corporate press rather than the mainstream press. He started talking about the biomedical security state. He started talking about scientific studies. And what I started to appreciate was, golly gosh darn, it turns out this Harvard Yale guy is actually smart. and I think what makes DeSantis different is that he is intellectually curious enough to actually read deeply in these things and continues to do so in power. And I think, for example, a good counterexample is like Ted Cruz. I think young Ted Cruz, I think if you're going to chart the IQ of Republican senators, Ted Cruz would probably be the leader of that group. I think like Masters might give him run for his money when he wins, but neither here nor there. And I think that he was someone who really read and really versed in the classics. And then you watch Ted Cruz talk today, and whether it is him intentionally talking down to people or it is him just kind of getting soft in D.C., and I'm not beating him up over it, just by extension, he doesn't he says really stupid things, even when he's trying to be like based and conservative. Like he gets really sloppy. What is remarkable about DeSantis is how disciplined he is, and I think that comes from him taking this stuff seriously. The confidence that he had doing the COVID stuff, it simply wasn't kind of a gut reaction to because it was very unpopular. Again, particularly when you consider Miami and the villages and some of these big pockets of retired people. You had Republicans. I have a great aunt in Miami. She's 97 years old. She hates taxes as good as any libertarian, but she was terrified to death because of COVID, because that's all the media was telling her to.
Right.
And DeSantis took it upon himself to say, no, we're not only going to open up, but we're going to punch these people right in the face. Fauci is wrong. He's wrong in the science. And it's because he invested into that. In a way that really only like Rand Paul, who himself is a medical doctor, has gone like intellectually toe to toe with. And so the intellectual side of DeSantis is something that I find to be remarkable. And I think it is coupled with a genuine faith. Thomas Carlyle is this very interesting British historian. He talks about these great kings. And the two examples he kind of highlights are both kind of revolutionary kings. One is Napoleon Bonaparte and one is Oliver Cromwell. And he identifies that Napoleon brought order back to revolutionary France, and he was very opportunistic with his kind of appreciation for religion, but it was him reinstalling religion in what had become an atheistic hellhole of the Reign of Terror, that brought order back to France, and he should be commended for it. He said, but the better man was Oliver Cromwell, who was a genuinely devout Christian and did not use religion in an opportunistic way, and instead was perfectly content on being a farmer, but took on this fight during the British Civil War because he thought it was necessary in the eyes of God. And I think that you can see this on display with Trump, where Trump has provided perhaps the greatest victories for the Christian right that we've seen, particularly with the Roe v. Wade decision.
Interesting.
I think Trump recognizes an alliance and a genuine friendship with the Christian right, but I don't think he's necessarily a devout Christian man that drives all of his worldview. I think Ron DeSantis is. And I think that also goes to the confidence and strength that he has in taking these positions. I think he's genuinely motivated by a true sense of morality that makes, say, like the school issues, the gender ideology stuff, the mutilation and sterilization of children that the state is pushing. He leans in those positions not only because they are political and opportunistic, but because they're right. And that is something that conservatives have been so scared of, defending positions that are so obviously right because they've lacked the courage to do so. And DeSantis, again, showing how courage actually benefits you politically.
MyPillow is having their biggest sheet sale of the year. You all have helped build MyPillow into the amazing company that it is today. Now, Mike Lindell, inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to his listeners. The Percale and Giza Dream bed sheet sets are available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they are all on sale for as low as $29.98 with our listener promo code. Order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. The Percale and Giza Dream sheets are breathable and have a cool, crisp feel. They come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. Don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. Call 1-800-870-0283. Use the promo code SITREP or go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and use promo code SITREP. Can he hang on to that? And you mentioned Senator Cruz. I like Ted Cruz. He's been a supporter of the organization that I work for, but I completely concur with your analysis in that he has changed over the years. And once in a while, you'll see a spark. We saw one this last week. You'll see a spark of the old Ted Cruz, and he's in there swinging. But then, he comes back to the political Ted Cruz. Can Governor DeSantis hold that? And I don't mean that he would walk away from his faith or even his manner of character, but it seems that politicians become more political as time goes on, and particularly when they're elevated to different places in the system. Can he maintain where he is?
Well, nothing is certain. And again, we should always kind of be betting against people in power maintaining kind of their integrity. Unfortunately, that's the way history goes.
Thank you for that very positive outlook. Very positive.
Right. But here's the promising thing, though, is that what history shows, though, is that while the tendency is for power to corrupt, I disagree with Lord Acton. It does not always corrupt.
Right.
History is marked by great men that can take that are up to the task that history puts on their shoulders.
That's good.
And there is nothing that DeSantis has showed me, particularly as governor, that has that again. If you're going to bet on someone right now, there's no one in the national landscape I would bet over Ron DeSantis.
Right.
And so that's all you can ask for is someone that you can have in good faith, have some confidence that he's up for the task. Yep. And I think that one of the things that encourages me is that the way that he went about the COVID response, it was not just simply him individually reading scientific decisions. Is that he recognized the inherent corruption of the entire federal public health apparatus. He called out Fauci for being a fraud, not simply being misguided, but being a fraud. He has attacked the corruptive aspects of the systems that are in place and have been in place for a very long time. And so when you consider the big challenges that we face as a nation at the federal level, they aren't simply specific policy areas. They are entire systems, right? Trump had, I think, very good instincts on foreign policy or the security states and things like this. He couldn't act on them because he didn't have kind of a holistic approach. He thought his force of personality would kind of push things through. What you have to do is you have to clean out these bureaucracies, right?
Yeah.
DeSantis has brought in his knack for talent in surrounding himself with not only like-minded individuals, but extraordinarily talented like-minded individuals like Joseph Ladapo as the Surgeon General, like Christina Pushaw, who, as DeSantis' press secretary, was actively shaping the narrative faster than the media could shape it, right?
Yeah.
He has such an incredible knack for talent evaluation. And I think if we're going to change the structure of government at the federal level, like if you ask me for like an outline for like how do we win? Well, we need a DeSantis-like figure in every red state with strong governors pushing back against corporate and federal tyranny. And at the federal level, we have to actively declaw the size of the federal government, which means, again, things at an economic level, breaking up federal spending and block granting it out to states so that their state capitals can divvy it up. Ideally, we'd be reversing that spending, but let's not get too crazy, right? I mean, appetite for that, but break it up, right? And we also need to reform. We need to purge the bureaucracy. We need to shrink the positions. We need to move these positions outside of D.C. and put the Department of Interior in Wyoming, right? And let's see how many D.C. yuppies want to move to Wyoming, right? Let's really trust their commitment to public service, right?
Sure.
We have to break structurally these institutions of power that have accumulated over a century of really progressive revolution in this country. And again, if you're going to ask me what is the one Republican that can think on that level, Ron DeSantis would be my guy. And so again, he might not be the man. But he's the man that I'm betting on right now, and I'm very encouraged that as time goes on, no matter how high my expectations get, he continues to surpass them. And again, that's all I can possibly ask for from an elected representative.
No, that's right, and that's great analysis too. I was having a conversation this last week about President Trump, and the conversation was, incredible president, did things that no one has done or hasn't done in a very long time. The man we needed at the hour. We'd love to see him be president again. But his Achilles heel was the people around him, or were the people around him. And I have taken the position that President Trump, as a patriot, looks at other people, other Americans, and concluded, we may not see this the same way or understand this the same way, but our goal is the same. Our goal is a better America, a freer America, the Constitution, more liberty. And he was mistaken in that. The people around him didn't believe that. They wanted to reshape America. And the right people around you, that to me is exactly the difference between someone who will succeed and someone who is going to be, President Trump, as wonderful as he was, it was like he had a weight tied to him the entire time he was in office, and he's still dragging a lot of that along with him. That's great analysis. I think you're exactly right.
Personnel's policy, and again, my personal perspective, I want to have 4 years of Trump and then 8 years of DeSantis, right? So I'm not saying I would much prefer, particularly as a Floridian. DeSantis
sure.
is a young guy. Let him have 4 more years in Tallahassee. 4 more years in Tallahassee, and then 2 years doing nothing but running. His children will be older. I think that would be better all around. Like, that's what I want. And I think there's also power that can be had by having a term limited president to kind of do some of the nasty stuff that you don't want to do if you're running for re-election. I kind of like that as well. To Trump's credit, I think that you saw at the very end of his administration, and again, it's frustrating that it didn't happen earlier, but again, nobody thought Trump was going to win in 2016, right?
Like, sure.
Trump was.
I don't think he thought he was going to win.
Trump came before the world was ready for it, which was uplifting and important and incredible. But since then, there's been a number of organizations that have propped up precisely for the purpose of getting good talent. Conservative Partners, which is an organization headed by Jim DeMint, they're doing a lot of great jobs to make sure that both the Trump administration, when it was in D.C., and kind of America First Republican offices are full of people that actually believe in the cause, right? They don't actually hate the people that put Trump in power, right?
Right.
So I think they've gotten better about that. I think the memo that came out a few months ago about Trump's plan on purging 50,000 bureaucrats by rebranding the classification of their employment, right? These are steps that are coming out already from Trump world that show, I think, a substantive plan that they've developed since leaving. That gives me hope. And again, you give me 12 years of that, and then we have the opportunity of making real change. Right. The other exciting thing, though, if we're looking for opportunities, is one of the people that I find really fascinating right now is Rick Scott. I was at the National Conservative event recently. Ron DeSantis killed it. One of the big talking points was how much better he was as a speaker than Rick Scott. But that's okay, right? Speaking is not Rick Scott's forte.
Right.
What Rick Scott's forte is spending a whole lot of money and winning. Right, he was great at getting victories. He built his entire parallel political apparatus within Florida politics, which is something that if you're not from around here, you wouldn't really understand the kind of significance of, right? And he would actually use that apparatus to go after legislators that weren't doing what Rick Scott wanted to do. Ideologically, he's not. There's plenty of times where I disagreed with him, but he was effective. He was efficient. What you have right now is this very interesting rivalry, this building up backlash between Mitch McConnell and Rick Scott. And so Rick Scott is going out of their way and helping all of the redheaded stepchildren that Mitch McConnell doesn't want to fund, right? All of these Peter Thiel-backed candidates like Blake Masters, who's my favorite candidate out there. People like J.D. Vance. These strong Republican, Trump, America First style Senate candidates that Mitch McConnell would rather be minority leader than not be majority leader in a Republican-controlled Senate. And I think he's sabotaging the cause. And I think you have people out there that are following along sabotaging that cause because they're terrified of people like Blake Masters. And so if you have the ability for Rick Scott to come in, let's say we have a 53-47 Senate, right? You don't need to win over 53 Republicans. All you need is 4 or 5 Republicans to stand together and say, we're not going to support you, Mitch. And then he doesn't have the votes to win. Right? This is how they got rid of Boehner back in the day, right? And so if you have the ability for someone like Rick Scott, who has, he's got the most important resource out there, which is a war chest, the ability to raise money right? Like that's the big responsibility a Senate Majority Leader has. Unfortunately, it's not policy, it's not ideology, it's that. Rick Scott is someone who has the ambition and the means to actually put a meaningful challenge in McConnell. And if you can get rid of someone like Mitch McConnell, right, or Kevin McCarthy, the impact that will have federally is huge. And that opens up the door where you can actually have, I think, the opportunity for Donald Trump, for Ron DeSantis, whatever comes next. That opens the door for so much more to be done. And it's also interesting from a Rick Scott perspective because, Mitch McConnell has arguably had far more impact on Republican Party politics than any Republican president because he's held that position for a very long time.
Right.
And so the impact of changing these leadership positions should not go understated. And again, we're in a unique opportunity where there's some really challenging things going on there that can open up what can be done to actually make the differences that we need.
So I always love talking to you because you speak so clearly about these issues. You understand them so well. And I know part of that is because you're very well studied. You read a lot. Even on your social media, you'll post articles and books and other things. What are some resources that you would commend to people to read to understand some of these bigger issues better, whether it's articles or books that are particularly meaningful to you? I think a lot of why people are confused is because we just haven't studied enough and learned enough. Where are some places people can go to learn and to understand and to vote right and to see things right and to kind of parse out what's happening?
Well, my necessary plug is Mises.org,
sure, of course.
MISES.org.
Right.
We've got a lot of great content. I'm going to have an article about the National Conservatism Conference coming up later today, which I think your viewers will find interesting. Also, What Has Government Done to Our Money.com is a video series that I think the money issue is one of the most underappreciated in politics out there. If you're concerned about the cultural decay of the country, if you're concerned about how these people can't have the power they have, the corporate consolidation aspect, money is such a big part of that. And we think about it as something very boring, but it's something so fundamental.
Sure.
And if any of your listeners reach out to me on Twitter, I'll send them a great new economic primer to kind of thinking like an economist, which I think kind of helps de-bamboozle what the regime's trying to push.
Yeah,
but beyond that, though, what I found particularly enlightening is spending time in history, right? We can talk about theory as much as you want. What I find particularly interesting of late is the history of revolution. There's a great podcast by Mike Duncan called the Revolutions Podcast. Don't follow him on Twitter. Some of his political takes are a little cringy, but that's fine. Still does great work. Yeah. He also has a great book called The Storm Before the Storm, which was kind of looking at like pre-Caesarian Roman politics, which has a lot of interesting overlap. And so the more that I spend time in history, the more that it challenges my own theoretical worldview, right? It makes me have to force the ideas in my head with kind of the ground that's before us, right? And that's been something that's really rewarding. And again, so I find figures like Hamilton, or like Alexander Hamilton, whose ideas I disagree with strongly. People like Napoleon, who has plenty of criticisms. The opportunity that they had rising up and making a difference and shaping the historical narrative in a way that makes them unforgettable. Yeah, there's something about those figures. Again, learning from where they did wrong, learning from what made them be what they are. That's something that challenges me forward and always pushes me kind of in the direction of self-improvement and never losing sight of the fight. Because again, the odds that we're faced, that they're great, but these guys have been facing things much larger than us. Right. And so again, that helps put us in perspective and kind of get outside of our own head sometimes, which could be a dangerous place.
That's awesome. I think it gives hope, too. I try to take people back to historical figures and moments that were arguably worse than what we're dealing with, and that gives us some hope that you can move forward through that. Tho, thank you so much, man. We could talk all day. I have so many questions, which means I'm going to invite you back on again, but thank you for your perspectives, and everyone needs to follow you on the Mises Institute. Anywhere else that you would like to push people to follow you and the work that you do?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Tho Bishop. And if you listen to podcasts, Radio Rothbard is the podcast I do for the Institute.
Awesome.
It's got a weekly podcast. We kind of current events mainly. Sometimes we go on some other tangents, but Radio Rothbard on all major podcast platforms.
Beautiful. Tho Bishop, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Many of our veterans feel they need to fight their battles alone. This self-isolation has led to the staggering statistic of more than 20 veterans taking their lives every day. The mission of Mighty Oaks is to eradicate the veteran suicide epidemic and help our warriors change their legacies. We've been able to help over 4,000 veterans and first responders by equipping them with the tools they need to live the lives they were created to live. Our faith-based, peer-to-peer approach has one of the highest success rates of any program available today, offering hope and understanding to those who need it most. By aligning their lives to biblical principles, these men and women are able to lead their families, their communities, and our nation. It's your generosity that can make a difference in the lives of the men and women who have fought for our country and our freedoms. Now that they're home, don't let them fight alone. Learn more at mightyoaksprograms.org. Again, always appreciate conversations with Tho, and man, go check his stuff out. There are few people who get a hold of what's happening in our culture the way he does and are able to articulate it the way that he can. I feel like I could just sit here and talk to him for hours, asking all of the questions that I have. I've got like a suitcase full of questions all the time. I carry it around with me. But he does such a great job. Please go and check out the work that he does, and you'll be helped in that process. If you're not yet subscribed to this podcast, please subscribe now, wherever it is you are listening from. Hopefully that is your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe so that you are aware of when this content comes out 3 times a week. New episodes are pushed out to you if you are subscribed. So go ahead and subscribe. Take some time then, go over to YouTube. You can find our channel there, The Situation Report on YouTube. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. Once you've done that, leave us a comment, and we would love to connect with you there. Thank you once again for listening. Thank you for watching if you are watching, and we will talk to you next time.